Hello, Shetty.
Welcome to the new office.
Welcome to the new situation. First time now we test this setting, and I'm very happy to say that this time this sound is brought to you by our first unofficial beer sponsor of Bionic Brew. Thank you for being with us.
Cheers.
And cheers.
Cheers, man.
A lot of you guys might know Joe personally, but for sure will have seen his beer around, and especially in relation to some events like the beer festivals and so on. It's been many years here in Shenzhen. Welcome to our show. I'll let you start introducing yourself.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I don't know what I need to introduce. We'll just figure kind of like over time, just get the story out. But I've been making beer in Shenzhen for about 7 years now. So.
You were making beers before you came to Shenzhen, or is it something that you developed while you were here?
Not exactly. So I was in and out of China since 2006. So I came here for a year, I left, and I started doing the beer thing after a very short stint at Great Leap in Beijing. I was a student working my master's, and they had like a very early days there, and they had a sign like help wanted. So I was like, yeah, I can pour beer. So 1 or 2 days a week I'd pour beer there just as something to do.
For your own,
Yeah, just basically they were like, hey, you know, we'll give you a little bit of hourly wage and free beer. And I was like, you had me at free beer. So I did that, and then I left China because I started a software company that got funded by a bunch of a VC fund in Dublin, Ireland. And so I left China for a couple years. I came back in like late 2013, I think it was, and Great Leap had really expanded. Like they went from this small little hutong sort of thing to this really big brewery, brew pub. It's like, that's pretty cool. I had made beer before in America, just like as a home brewer. I was really not very good at it, but I had, tried it, and I thought like I want to do something again. And the software wasn't really for me because it was a little too abstract. I wanted something I could put my hands on, something I could like
get dirty with.
I could do the work. And I was just fascinated by beer. I always loved it. I grew up partly in Germany, so I was around good beer my whole life. And then obviously being a part of the American craft beer scene, sort of seeing that evolve, I thought I want to do that. So I came down to Shenzhen in April of 2014, and we opened to the public in July of 2014. So it was.
So when you opened up the pub, though, like you were already like developing recipes before, or you kind of just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna open the pub and see what kind of beer comes out, and
it's kind of like option B.
Sell it if I can sell it, and see if people like it.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't think either one of you guys came to the first Bionic. There was 3 of them in Baishizhou, and
I think I came to the second one.
The second one and the third one, yeah. First one was very short-lived because they kept getting closed by the police.
Oh.
And
but that was the one nearby Magma?
No, that was the third one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was the last
one.
Okay.
So the first one was on this. If you came out of Windows of the World, exit C, there was a road called, I think it was Jinhelu, and there was a German guy, that had a falafel shop.
Okay.
Rose Cafe.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, Rose Cafe, right? It was like Berlin porno style. It was like the craziest thing, right? But this guy, he was so cool, so nice, and I had stumbled upon this place, or someone took me to Baishizhou, like my first week of being here. He's like, you gotta check it out. So he was like, I know a guy who's got a storage unit, like back in this road. So I went back in there, and sure enough, there was a storage unit. And I rented it for like 2,000 RMB a month.
Wow, okay.
And put a little brewery in there, or not really a brewery at that time, it was just some taps. And it did pretty well. So like within 30 days, the storage unit had another side that was a lot bigger, and there was just a temporary wall dividing it. So I asked the landlord, "Cause like, can I have all of this for 5,000?" He was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." So he wasn't using it.
Right.
So we just moved out all the junk, and then we put the brewery in there, and then we were brewing it all in the same place as we were selling it.
So before,
Nice.
so you've found a place that you were making the beer somewhere else, like when you just opened up the few taps, you already like had some other
Yeah, so there was a guy who had a very large home brewery in, I don't exactly know where in Shenzhen, but it was like on the outskirts of Shenzhen. It would take me about an hour and a half on a bus to get out there.
Right.
And I would go out there, and he had
Like converted his apartment into like a brewery?
he had rented another apartment in his building, and the top apartment was really nice because he had like the rooftop access, and he had like a barbecue out there, and he just had this big old brewery. And I was like, hey, can I rent this from you? He was like, yeah, but I don't want money, but you got to give me a keg of everything you make. So, which was actually kind of expensive if you think about it, because that was like basically 20% because I was making 100 liters at a time. So I would give him a keg, and I'd keep 4 for myself. And I did that for, I don't know, like maybe 2-3 months. And we just kept running out of beer. And for a time period, like all I had on tap was wheat beers because I could make them in 2 weeks as opposed to IPAs, which would take a month. So I did that until I was able to buy my own equipment. And I think we had that equipment in there for 2 months, and then they closed us down.
I mean, at the one next to the Rose Cafe?
The one next to Rose Cafe.
Because of specific problems, they wanted their place back?
No, the specific problem was I refused to pay a bribe. So the guy to get the license wanted $8,000, and I just said, no, I'm not doing that.
You mean like the liquor license? Or?
Yeah, the license to get the approval, the one you hang by the door.
Yeah.
Right, whenever you go to a bar or whatever. And 2 weeks later, we were, they kicked in the door, and they're like, this is an illegal operation. And I was like, oh, okay, because I didn't pay. I should have just probably paid the money, but I didn't want to start that cycle of, I've never paid a bribe. I hadn't done so then, I haven't today. So it's just like, I don't like that.
So there was like the application fee, and then plus on top of that, he wanted the little
he wanted 8,000, and he's like, let's go to dinner, and my agent straight up told me the price. She's like, if we're going to dinner, you need 8,000 in an envelope. This house,
This is,
I was like, I don't want to do that, so I never went to dinner.
It's very common. To me,
but I mean, at the end, though, it probably cost you more than 8,000 once you got like shut down.
Oh yeah, I mean, from a accounting standpoint, I should have just paid the money.
Right.
It would have been a lot cheaper.
Yeah. When because sometimes it is not so straightforward. You might not expect it, or they don't tell you directly. But then when you know it, that's kind of what they expect.
Right.
You just go straight to the point.
I found out later. This is not why I did it. I mean, I didn't do it because I just felt that it was the wrong thing to do. But I did find out later that there is a law. If you're an American citizen, you're not allowed to pay bribes in foreign countries. It's not that you can't pay a bribe in the U.S. You can't. It's illegal for me to pay a bribe in China, according to the U.S. government. That's not why I did it.
Okay.
I don't really care what they think, but I just thought that it was not the right, because you never know, when does that cycle end? He comes back 6 months later, I need a bit more. He comes back later, I need a bit more.
Yeah, of course.
Or he wants to buy a new car, or his kid's going to
I was
shoes.
The head of police in Baishizhou, he drove a Porsche Cayenne. Mm-hmm. You don't make that on a cop's salary.
Right.
I don't think so. No.
Wow. And then you, so that place got shut down, and then you moved to, which I love the second location.
Yeah, it was nice.
It was like the second, you were like walking through like what I would describe like a factory dormitory, and then like you turn right, and it's like this very narrow alley
where there is a certain moment was an S shape.
It was, you walked, there was a guy who had a bar in the front of it for a very short period of time. I don't remember the name of it. I want to say it was like 2030 or something. And you would walk by that, and there was an industrial park. And we had, at that time, we moved our brewery into one dorm room, and we moved the bar into a building next to the dorm.
Okay.
So they were separated. And that was when the partnership with NYPD started, was in that location. So he wanted to have a delivery service in that area. I wanted to do the bar. So let's just partner up, and you do the kitchen, I'll handle this part. And we actually spent a little bit of money on that one. We did it up,
It looked nice inside.
We did it proper. We thought we were in at this point, so I didn't feel like I didn't have to.
You were meant to stay.
That's what I anticipated. So we did some redesign, we did some construction, we made it look good, okay, and that lasted, I think, 6 weeks or 2 months.
Oh really?
And then it was shut down. The landlord said it was all good, but then it turned out to be not all good.
Like
for him, or for the
zoning issue?
Yeah.
Or?
Well, the licensing, it's like, you can get it. And then we open this place up, and then they're like, well, you can't get it now. I'm like, is this like a payment thing? Do I need to pay somebody? And they're like, well, we're not saying this or that. I'm like, it just didn't work. I think the problem is that guy with the bar in the front, he got in trouble. And so when they came to bust him, they kept seeing all these people going to this, all these foreigners mostly, because at the time are
going this back alley, wondering what's going on.
Yeah, like, you know, now our clientele is actually mostly Chinese, but back then it was mostly foreign. And they're like, where are these guys going? And so they just kind of like followed the foreign, you know, breadcrumbs. And there's this like back in this alley, there's this like hidden speakeasy brewery. Like, this is crazy. And like they arrested the bar or detained my bartender, took him off away, you know, and we were all like, we'll talk to you tomorrow. So,
wow. Okay.
Yeah. And it was crazy. Like you would walk to this place and you would have no idea that there was a bar back there. Like you're walking to like some gate, and then there's like a big building, I think, on the right side. And it's like, it's that way, go straight. And then all of a sudden, you know, you arrive. But
no, even
the very, very hidden location.
Hidden. But that's why this third one was so cheap. Like when I put it together, because we assumed we've been closed twice. We're gonna open up this third one. There's no way we're gonna stay here more than 3 months. So we just ripped out all the stuff from the second bar and we just put it in there, thinking we'd be gone pretty soon. And I had already started this other bar in Futian, which I'm not a part of, but it was called Mash. And so I was like, well, let's not waste any money at least. And we put it all together, and then it was there for 3 years. It never, it's like they never shut.
When
us
you
down
put
again.
the last effort in it, it lasted.
Yeah. Until they knocked the building down.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty cool that, I mean, like, you didn't like give up after like the first, like for me, man, like you open up one time, then you get shut down. The second time, you get shut down. Third time, it would be a little bit hard for me. Like, fuck, man, maybe this is not like the right place or the right city or the right area to do this kind of business. But
I've had people joke and say that I've opened more breweries in China than anybody. Shut down.
Well, it can be like a consultancy for everyone else who wants to start a brewery and stuff. Yeah.
Right.
So at the second location, you had the brewery next door to it?
Yeah, and that survived. So when they shut the bar, they didn't know the brewery was there. So we just kept brewing all the beer for a couple of years. So that kept going, right? It was just fine.
Well, they didn't see the flow of people, though.
Well, there's no flow. It's just like a
like
lights-off building.
We had rented these two dormitories, and one was for storage and one was for brewing. And then that got shut down when the landlord, who had rented us that part where the second bar was doing something illegal, go figure, where he was renting it out to like people to live in, which you shouldn't be doing. And somebody had died in a fire. I think it was from like an electric bike or something, like they were charging an e-bike or something with a battery, caught on fire. Someone dies in there. So they come to do an investigation, and while they're doing the investigation, it's like daytime, you know, because we were never there at night. And they see our guys in there brewing. They're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "What do you mean? We've been doing this for years." You know, the head of police was with him. We're like, "You know us." He's like, but he has these other people with him that are not from the neighborhood, or they're from another department. He's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." I'm like, "Oh, we're gonna do this now." So they taped the door. You know, they put the white tape on it. It's done. They cut the power. You know, all my beer was in there. So that was when we lost the brewery. And then
it was also like your storage at that point.
Yeah, we had everything that was like unbar related. Everything that was beer related was in those.
And you had literally lost it, or
lost it all. Yeah.
Fuck.
Well, we got it back eventually, but it took a month, and we lost most of the beer.
But you got back
Because
your brewery equipment.
Yeah, we got the equipment back eventually.
Okay, at least.
But all the beer went bad, or
Most of it, like 2/3 of it, had gone bad already. Because without power, you can't control the temperature, and without temperature control, the beer is not going to last.
Facts.
So during that time, like once they shut the door, I assume you only had like a limited stock at the third bar. So that's when you like started to like figure out.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, like at that time, that was 2016 or 17, I can't remember, but you know, the community kind of came together a little bit, and I think a couple breweries, I want to say Great Leap and Master Gal, just sent me a pallet of beer or two. They were like, "Hey man, it's on you, it's on us, like just take it." So they sent me something to sell, which was nice. And then a few other breweries were just like, "Hey, just give me the costs, you know, and we'll send down a pallet." So some guys were just stepping forward and letting me have beer at a good price, so I could keep the doors open long enough to figure out what I was going to do next. And then I was bouncing around China, finding breweries where I could like, "Hey, can I brew here?" Like Gypsy Brewing Can I brew 2,000 liters here? Can I brew 1,000 liters there? And I'm still doing that to this day. I'm still bouncing around China, finding breweries I can make beer in. So,
because I mean, in terms of volume, it would be impossible with your own equipment to make
I sold
what you
that.
would.
Yeah, I mean, I got rid of that equipment because we had already outgrown it. So I sold it off because at this point we're selling far more beer than we could ever have made on that equipment.
Exactly,
anyways.
right.
So I was like, well, this is kind of useless. I'll sell it to someone else who wants it. And then one day when I do build a new brewery, when I can solve that problem, I'll buy all new stuff, bigger stuff, nicer stuff. You know, when you first start a brewery, start any business, you make a lot of mistakes. You don't really know what you're buying and what you're getting into, but over time you learn, like, oh, I don't need this, I do need that. What can I save? What can I do better?
So eventually you would like to have like a big brewery somewhere that's producing all of your stuff, or for now you're not, until you finish the Gypsy brewing?
I mean, that's the goal. That's what I want to do, but it's not easy because money's one component, so you're gonna have to raise, a couple $1 million to do that. But the biggest problem is your licensing in China is extremely heavily regulated. So it's not almost a question of money as it is a question of like, who do you know who can help get you the license? And that doesn't necessarily mean you need to pay for it. It just means they're not going to easily walk up and say, here's a license for this, like they will in a lot of countries. There's not a playbook. They say, tick all these boxes and you're qualified. It's more like, well, you can't pump your wastewater into the municipal system, so no. But you're like, but if I can treat it, they're like, yeah, still no. But if you find someone that they maybe know and they've done business with before, like, okay, if you do this and this and this and this, we'll give you the license. So I'm trying to work on that now. But the way most people in China get around that is they open a brew pub, and that brew pub can send beer to other bars that they themselves own, but they couldn't send it to another bar. So a stopgap would be to open a brew pub and then use that brew pub to send the beer to our other bars, but we wouldn't be able to sell it, and we wouldn't be able to can it like we can with this beer. Couldn't sell it like now we sell beer in convenience stores and other bars. We couldn't do that with that beer. So we'd have to continue to OEM or Gypsy Brew until we were able to get that full-on brewery license, which can take quite some time, and it's pretty expensive.
But you managed to be constant and consistent if you are changing a brewery. I mean, in terms of process, I'm asking, maybe it's a stupid question, but I never made beer. So
no, our consistency is all over the place. And that's one of the biggest problems that we have is, people that have been around for a long time and had our beer remember what it was like when we either I made it or someone who worked for me made it, right? And it was a more consistent product. Now it's, I've gone through a lot of bad places. I'm now going through some better ones. We've found some new places, or we've helped some places we've used before like get better. But ultimately you have to rely on them to do it, and the beer quality is not as quite as good as it was before, I feel like, when we made it ourselves, which is always annoying when you develop a product and you're like, this is the best, I want this to be what it can be, and then it's like missing that little bit,
something. Yeah.
So we want to avoid that as much as possible, but it's hard.
Yeah, but I guess it's like if you're cooking, replicating the same recipe, like your grandma gives you the ingredients and how to do it, and then you do it yourself. It's like not necessarily. Yeah,
you need someone to really be. I mean, beer is. It's not. How do I say it? It's not really hard to make beer. It's a little complicated. It really gets into chemistry and the way the ions in the water are working together and things like basic things that a water test, which anybody could get for you in America for $28. Here, it costs
they don't even know what it is.
Yeah, I mean, like you go to a testing lab and you spend 1,000 RMB, which is $150, and they won't even give you the results you're looking at. I need to know these specific things that what's in this water, and we don't test that. So it's like we can't get a lot of accurate information. So a lot of people, I send my water to a place in the United States. So I take the water, I bottle it, we ship it to the United States. A lot of brewers do that in China.
Okay.
And we know we can get it done right and done cheaply. The problem is just finding someone to ship the water,
Like FedEx won't ship the water for you?
A lot of places won't ship liquids.
Yeah.
So what are you looking for in the water, like when you do the test? Like what specifically cons and pros are you
You're looking for a variety of like mineral composition in the water. You want to know like what kind of calcium and sulfates and sodium and different combinations of ions that are going to produce, because all of these are fixable. You just got to know what they are. And then if you know what is in the water,
Balance
you can
on the
okay,
rest.
well, I can just add a little calcium, or I can add a little of that, or add a little lactic acid or whatever, and I can make this different. But you need to know what's in it before you can change it. So,
Right. Okay.
so there's a big difference in the beer I find outside of China than in China right now, and I think that's part of the reasons is you're unable to get the information you need in order to improve upon it.
To make like a good
But wouldn't
balance.
you be able to, for example, take their water here and get it tested somewhere else? Then at least.
Yeah, that's what we do. We
Okay,
send
okay.
it
To
to
the US to
America.
get it tested.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you were shipping the water for being used. Sorry,
No.
I misunderstood. That
But
was
also, like, so the water you're getting is what, from city tap water, or?
Yeah. You take the city water and you filter it with a carbon.
But even that though, like, could be changed week to week or
Yeah, so
month by month.
Generally in the brewing business, you're supposed to test your water once every 3 to 6 months. So
There's no like machine, like a water machine where you like you pump it in and it has like some computer that goes good.
I'm sure it exists,
You need
but
this.
what-
and-
probably it's not going to be
Well,
cheap, and it's
yeah,
not going to
it'll
be
be
like
costly.
you don't find it in on Taobao. I don't know.
yeah. So I mean, like I said, in the U.S., a water test is I think $28. So it's pretty easy for you to take your bottle, send it over. A week later, you get the results. Here, it's again, I can pay the same testing fee, but getting them the water is a bit of a pain.
But anyway, I mean, the amount. What do you say? Like 1 liter?
No,
Or
they
even
actually,
less.
I think it's like 350 milliliters.
Oh,
is enough
okay.
to-
So it's like a can something. You don't have to.
But
ship
like
it.
month to month or week by week, I mean, the city water is always consistent, or is it?
I try to do it twice a year, but like I said, they recommend once a quarter. But because of all the problems involved with doing it, we go for twice a year. It's good, better than most people can do.
And do you see that there's a big variety in the results?
Yeah, for sure.
Like
It's like
like I don't know.
you mean like in the flavor of the beer, or
According to
even
the
just
change
like
of water,
the
yes,
physical
yes.
chemical compound of the. Like
Well,
when
like
you
I
did
s-
it like the first half of the year and the second half of the year, is it like missing calcium, or is it?
no, it doesn't have to be like a massive difference. It depends unless they make a change. Like for example, Denver last year changed the pH of their water because they wanted to raise the pH because they're having I don't know exactly what probably a problem with lead pipes or something. So they just told everybody we're going to raise this pH from I don't know what it was 7.5 to 8.2 or something. And so then all the brewers would then just recalculate, okay, if this is what it is now, then I need to make a calculation of what I need to add now to make sure that it comes out the same.
Right.
Because the real hard part I find of making beer is keeping it consistent every time. I one time was drinking with this guy, I forget his name, Chris something. He started this brewery called Le Chouf, which is this little gnome in Belgium. Really good beer. So he was in Baltimore, and my friend and we all went out, and he was like, it's harder to make beer than wine. I was like, why? He goes, well, everybody knows that certain years are good and bad for wine. It's like they know that 2008 was good for this and 2012 sucks. So the buyer will accept that. He goes, but the buyer for beer never accepts.
They assume it's always
yeah,
fucking
the
same.
ingredients. The weather changes for grapes. The weather changes for barley and hops and everything else.
That's true, man.
But so you've got to be able to blend it and modify it to make it taste the same year after year. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. I never thought about it. But so he's like, it's a little harder to do that. Which is why most of the big breweries blend. They take a bunch of tanks and they're like, okay, I want to blend these tanks with that tank and make the same beer that they had last time.
But also, I guess that because the wine is anyway supposed to be conserved for a long time, beer not necessarily. But I guess that whether it's in a can or in a glass, the temperature, if it gets sunlight or whatever, it also might change because of how you keep it in the short term.
Oh, for sure. I mean, light's the number one problem, light and temperature. That's why canned beer is better than bottled beer.
That's what I
Which
heard.
almost no one thinks that's like, when you're, as a kid, you think like the cheap shit comes
Yeah,
It's
you
like
look at
you can't, right? Unless it's like really big bottles, you know. Like,
yeah. But actually, the truth is, canned beer is generally better.
Because at least for sure there is no UV light,
No
of
light,
course,
yeah.
getting in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's better for the environment. You can stack more on top of each other and ship more in a less volume, that kind of thing.
And but how does the canned beer compare to, like, if we take the same, this, what is this?
300, 500.
This is the
500.
pale ale, the IPA.
Yeah.
So how would this taste compared to if I tasted your beer on draft of the same beer?
There shouldn't be any difference between the batches because nothing's pasteurized in the can or the keg. A lot of times in the U.S. or in other countries, they'll pasteurize the cans so they can sit on the shelf at room temperature, but they won't pasteurize the kegs. We don't pasteurize either one of them, but that means if we didn't keep it cold, there would be a difference in the flavor. But we don't keep it warm. We have a big cold room. We ship it cold. We store it cold. We deliver it cold. It never gets warm from the time it comes out of the fermentation tank or the packaging tank. Yeah. So we don't have that issue. But a lot of places that don't do that would have that issue, which is why a lot of times we don't sell beer to people if they don't have the ability to keep it cold, which is a problem in South, like Hong Kong, South China, stuff like that, because the bars aren't that big. So they don't have a lot of space for coolers.
They cannot keep them on the fridge. They put them in the storage.
Yeah, they're like, I just put them on the floor. I'm like, it's going to taste bad, and then you're going to be mad at me because it doesn't taste good. Right. And I delivered it just fine. So it does keep us from getting a lot of draft accounts. Because most of you've seen those systems here where the keg sits out and it goes through that cold machine, right? Yeah. Those are called flash chillers. And those are great for an event. If you've got an event to do, get a flash chiller. But you don't want that as your main way to dispense beer in a bar. Because if that beer is not pasteurized, it's going to be bad within a couple of days. But they're used to selling Qingdao and Tiger and whatever other beer. So they're not aware of that. And they don't have the systems in place to swap them out because there's not enough space in the bar.
Yeah. So. True.
So what about the brand and the... Because I've seen, like, when you very first started to where you are now, you kind of went through a rebranding and image and design.
Yeah, we've done it a couple times actually. So when we first opened the original spot, there was no logo. I mean, we had the name.
Where'd the name come from?
I came up with it on a train. I was taking a train from Kunming to Beijing on like a 38-hour. I'd done that trip a couple times. Like when I first came here, I actually came on a train from Europe, but we'll get there later. So anyways, I was just on this train and I was reading a magazine. I don't exactly know where it came from, but I was like, yeah, I like this name. And then just kind of went with it. But so there was some guy who I've never met sent me a logo. He's like, I made you a logo. I'm like, okay, cool. So it was like a circuit board.
You never met like for real, but he, of course, he knew you were doing beer.
He had come in and I guess he had drank our beer many times, but I had not been in there because from early on, I had other people running the bar. I was like running the bar for like the first month or two. Maybe 2 or 3 months, and then after that it wasn't me. So a lot of customers I didn't know, and so he made it, and I was like, that's cool. So we used that for like a year, and then I got on 99 Designs, and I had somebody do like another one. It had it was like a robot with a hop and stuff. It was very beer kind of looking, and then I was like, I want to do like a real brand. I want to have something that looks good. So I got on the internet, and I was able to find this guy named Christian Helms. He has a place called Helms Workshop out of Austin, Texas, and he does like really big brands. I mean, he's done Boulevard and New Belgium, I think, and just these massive tech brands and car brands and beer brands. Right. And I think he gets paid pretty well for what he does, and I couldn't afford him. But we developed this relationship, and he was like, hey, man, I think it's cool what you're doing. I'd love to just help out. So we went over like a 6-month process of just redoing everything, and his team... working with us came up with the rabbit and the lightning bolt, and then kind of went from there.
Was there a reason behind the rabbit, or
because of your rabbit sign or something?
No, I just in like old Chinese folklore, there's a rabbit who lives on the moon and makes the elixir of life, which I was not even that aware of until I started looking into because trying to find some connection for like what we're gonna do, and then this rabbit idea popped up, and we're like, hey, let's go with that. That's pretty
nice.
Cool. And then we just made it more Shenzhen, I guess, with like this, the electricity and the buzz of the city and the quickness, and because Bionic had always been, the fastest. We moved in. I got here in April. We were open in July. I was moving as fast as I could possibly move. Whether we were ready or not, we're doing it. So it kind of all fit together with the brand.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. Nice. It's cool to know that.
And I was really happy. It was funny because when we first looked at it, everyone was like, I don't know. And then we thought about it, and I was like, I like it a lot. And then the staff was like, I don't know. I'm like, just hear me out on this. Like, I think it's going to be great. And so we kept pushing and pushing, and finally we're like, all right, now everybody loves it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like it took a while.
I mean, when I first saw the rebranding, man, I thought it was great. You know.
Well, you guys are designers.
You know, and now you have like an icon, a mark, you know, that's recognizable and unique.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, there's not something that, like, there's that million robots out there.
Also, I think in terms of, especially, I mean, you're selling it in China, so beyond what the Chinese name might be, I think it's also simple enough to be easily recognized by Chinese customers.
Yeah, and
it's not like a name or a logo that represents something. It's like,
I've been surprised how many people know it in China, but also how many of them know it in English. So a lot of them know it in both.
What's the Chinese name?
Baishizhou.
Baishizhou.
oh, okay.
Yeah, Baishizhou, and it's the same buy that a lot of companies use, like, Baidu, which you know the search, that same buy. It happens to be the same buy as in Budweiser. That wasn't really. I wasn't thinking about that when we did it, but later
It's called Bai Wei, right?
Yeah,
in Chinese.
So that same character is really popular in Chinese.
But is it the same as Baizhou as well?
No,
Because that is white. Okay.
Yeah, different one. But yeah, that's where that came from. We rebranded it in 2017. We launched it at the beer fest, the second beer fest we had, and we're not changing it from here on.
How did the beer festival thing affect the brand? I think a lot, right?
It seems to have helped. I mean, when we opened the brewery, people thought that was a little weird because no one had really done that before in Shenzhen, and some people said that wasn't the right time or whatever. It's like, we're gonna do it anyways. Same sort of thing happened with the beer fest, where the next year, so we opened the beer fest. Just had its 6th anniversary a couple months ago. So the beer fest is about 6 months younger than the brewery. And the first festival we had 6 breweries at. We were one of them.
Okay.
So we didn't have many at all. It was really well attended. We sold a lot of beer, but it wasn't like the thing it is today. And now, I mean, a lot of people know the festival and they don't know us.
Right. Okay.
We don't even. We always put Bionic Brew Presents on the poster, but it's real small. We don't make it about us so much, and so oftentimes people will know the festival and they're like, who does this? I'm like, we're right on the poster. Like, just look, it says it right there. You can follow the QR code. And like, oh, like, because most people think it's a big something behind it.
Right.
They don't realize that basically 2 people do that festival, and organize all these people, and bootstrap it, which is. It's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work.
I can imagine.
We don't have a big team. I mean, we have teams that come together for volunteers, and we do the best we can with what we got. But it's not like we have 6 or 8 or 10 people
just working on that.
One's doing marketing and one's doing logistics and whatnot. It's just literally it's a few friends getting together and like, hey, how much will you charge for a poster? And we need music. What are we gonna do with that? But I hope this next one, the 7th one, is. Going to be even better. They're always better, but I think it's going to be more professional. We're going to start to like hone it in a little bit, upgrade the music, get more vendors. I think last year we did 24 breweries. I think next year we'll go for 28, maybe 30.
This year there were a lot of when you moved it to Fujian. I mean, it was big. I remember that in the beginning was more also, if I remember properly, it was a lot of like concerts and bands rather than
the first
DJ
2 years
music,
we did
right?
Yeah.
It was like a full day of like entertainment and stuff like that.
Well, so live music doesn't work well with the authorities. So the first 2 years was always bands, and ever since the 3rd year it's been DJs, because I learned that I get less noise complaints with DJs. And the first 2 festivals were kind of shut down, but at the very end. So the first one was supposed to go till 11, and it got shut down at 10:30. The second year, we did make it to 11, but there was literally a bus of cops. There were like 50 cops lined up outside getting ready to raid the place. And I'm like, we're done at 11, guys. If you just wait till 11. And so they waited. And sure enough, I was like, music's off. Boom, we're done. And they're like, okay. And so after that, I was like, we're doing DJs. No more live bands.
At least you can put down the volume with a
Yeah.
DJ, you know, right?
You can't turn down a live band. They're like, we gotta play louder. I'm like, we are not going to jail right now. No, we're not doing louder. So,
And what bar were you at when you guys first decided to do the beer festival?
bar number 2.
Bar number 2.
Yeah, bar number 2. And then it was funny. So we had the curse of the beer festival for a few years. We broke that curse this year, but
What's the curse of the beer festival?
so the second year festival was at the second bar, and I think it was 3 days. Within a week after that festival is when bar 2 got closed.
Oh.
And then the third year, what happened the third year? Oh, the third year of the festival was I was gipsy brewing in a place in Shenzhen, but on the edge of Shenzhen, so it was really convenient for me. And it was bought by the Riverflow Group, and I was kicked out the day after the beer festival. So, like,
Oh.
on
So
Monday,
there's something going wrong
yeah.
with it.
So like you can't brew here anymore. I'm like, what? I have a contract with this guy. Like, well, he just sold the brewery to us, and now it's null and void. I was like, but all my ingredients. So they made me. I had not only couldn't brew there, but I had to then pay to have all my ingredients and shit shipped from that place back to my warehouse.
Fuck.
Oh my
right?
gosh.
And then one year, a guy had a big injury in our bar a couple days after. I think it was like 4 days after the festival. And it wasn't our fault. We didn't do anything.
There by
wrong.
Magma, the guy.
A fight or like
No,
With the mirror thing?
it was the wall came. He was, I think, picking on the wall, and like the thing came off, and it just cut his whole nose off.
Yeah, the nose. I thought it was the ear. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, I remember.
And I was like, I was home, and I get a message, and I'm like, look, there's all this blood all over the bar. What the fuck is going on? And I ended up going, getting I was basically in bed. I got out of bed. I go down there, and I'm like, is there a fight? What's happening? They're like, no, this dude lost his nose. I'm like, what? They sent me a picture. I was like, wow, he definitely lost his nose.
Fuck,
and I was like, that sucks. What happened? And everyone's like, we don't know. He was in the bathroom. He was drunk. And
He was super drunk.
yeah, and then he was peeling on something, and I think he just ripped off the tile. And that tile was it's porcelain, so it's razor sharp.
Right.
And it's heavy. I think it had to weigh 10 kilos. And then, he got it put back on. It looked pretty good. I saw it later.
his nose is all right now?
He looks good. It was fine. It all worked out, but it was traumatic probably for him. So that was the curse of the beer fest. And then it didn't have, this past year, we pulled it off in 2020, which like almost nobody pulled off an event in 2020.
Right.
And we did it completely mask free. If you don't want to wear a mask, don't wear a mask. Like 3,000, I don't know how many people showed up this year. It wasn't 3,000. It was a little smaller.
It was huge.
But it was busy. A few thousand people. Everything went fine. No one got sick. No one got injured. No one got fights. Which we've never had a fight, so that's not really a big issue for us normally. But I was just amazed we pulled it off in 2020. So next year we're planning on having it in Nantou,
Right.
where our new bar is going to be.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be really, really cool.
It's gonna be cool. We know the area.
Where are
well.
you gonna do it in Nantou?
You're planning in the plaza?
Yeah,
there by
in the plaza, on both
Gaga,
levels.
where there is the bamboo pavilion.
Yeah, so we'll do both levels. So we'll have like the two different levels, and then we'll take over the whole plaza for the festival. Will be 3 days as usual. It's always the second weekend of November, unless something changes it. But the first part of November. And what'll be interesting for us is we'll have our new bar in Nantou. So for the first time ever, you can actually go to Bionic while you're at our festival. Because usually they're very far apart. Like our bar's in Nanshan, but the festival's in Lohu or something like that. So
It's also very nice that, if you think about it, like you said, people might think there is a big group behind and stuff, but yourself, you're a beer brewer and beer brand, but you're actually helping promoting the beer market, which, as opposed to many other might think, you might be kind of, I don't want to say like jealous, but like focus on your thing and not supporting the rest. But I think is making, how to say, the bars of being people aware about the craft beer market really higher.
What's that saying? The rising tide raises all boats or something like that, where I just feel like it is in some way still self-interest for us, because as long as the beer gets better and more people drink good beer, then it eventually will probably come back to help us out. But we we'd love to have a sponsor, but we've never had a sponsor for the festival. We pretty much run that whole thing off the fees that come from the guys, the breweries and the food vendors who join it, which is why we always try to make sure they're happy. And for us, a good metric is to know like who wants to come back. Like if it wasn't
from
a good
one
deal,
festival to another,
right,
like, year by year.
and we have every year 80% of them want to come back, and some of them will literally offer to pay on the spot. They're like, hey, can I reserve for next year? I'm like, just wait, we'll send out invitations, because we try to balance the number of breweries versus the number of people we think we can get, because we don't want, a lot of festivals in China are really expensive, and we don't charge that much for our fest, and we try to make sure that the guys at least break even. Hopefully they'll make a profit, but at least break even, because it's a lot involved with the festival. You've got to bring your staff, you've got to bring
The
hotels,
equipment.
People move.
yeah, all this stuff.
A lot of people come from outside Shenzhen, of
Most
course.
of them are from outside
So,
Shenzhen,
yeah.
So it's a balance of like, well, I think we can get 3,000 people this year. Okay, we can do 24 breweries. Or I think we can get 4,000 people. We can do this many breweries.
Right.
And it's hard to kind of gauge that right now of like what the market's going to do. So we, every year for the most part, most people are like, yeah, we definitely want to come back. And then there comes another problem of where every year new breweries show up, and we want to try to keep it fresh for people, right? So we want to make sure that some of the good older breweries are coming back, but we also we need room for new people.
For the young bloods.
Yeah, for the new guys coming up, so they can get an opportunity. And it's a balancing act.
Yeah.
We don't really play favorites. At least we try not to be like, okay, I like this guy or whatever. But, we invite whoever we think is going to provide good beer and be a good time.
And the fact that there is many more brands, you reckon, in terms of the beer culture, they are like new also because there is new brands in breweries coming up, or
There's tons. I mean, the problem in China is we can't really define craft beer. There's no legal definition. So like in the United States, there's a legal definition of what is craft beer and what is not.
So what's that definition? I don't even.
It's changed a little bit, but I want to say you have to make less than 6. I don't remember. It's like it's a volume measurement. So it's like
produced
X amount
by yourself,
right? And they use barrels in the U.S., which even I don't fully understand barrels. I use the metric system, but it's a pretty big amount. But it's
so
not.
you would still be considered craft beer in the States based on how much.
I'll
beer
give you an
make?
example of who's craft beer. So, what's the name of that company that makes the Boston? Sam Adams.
right?
They are technically craft beer. They're like
They
the
make a
largest
lot
producer, but
Of craft beer.
But they've also changed the rules because they're like one of the bigger. I think like they give a lot of money to the organization, and they are
lobby
independent.
them on the other
so
side,
they keep
yeah.
raising the volume level. But so you got to be independent. So less than 20% of your brewery can be owned by a foreign or a macro brewer like Qingdao or Kirin or
Heineken,
whatever.
yeah.
And then you've got to have a volume amount that you've got to be under. And they used to have an adjunct rule where you couldn't use anything but the 4 major ingredients, but they changed that because there's so much good beer being made with like random things. Before you couldn't do that with beer, like you had to have water, malt, hops, and yeast. But they were like, yeah, but if I add this,
But not even in terms of like flavors, you would not be allowed. Like you want to add
they couldn't
kind of
before, but
mango.
now they
or-
can. Now you can do that.
Yeah.
But in China, none of that exists. So you'll find the words "jingyang pijiu," like craft beer, on everything. So you'll have the most god awful beer.
Even Qingdao is probably having
They
his
do,
line
they
of
do.
yeah.
You can get everything. Is like if you walk into a place and you've never heard of it and it's a restaurant and it has craft beer on the menu, don't drink it. It's probably garbage.
I think I saw the bottle version of Qingdao Craft. I think you got it.
It's like in a brown.
Yeah, with a nice can and stuff, and it's craft. All right.
I mean, Qingdao should just do it. They make a good, okay lager. Like, just make that. But, it's like IPA. Those 3 magical letters. They'll slap it on anything. And it's like, that there's a definitive style. There's a book of styles. You can go through the book and you can say, it meets the requirements to be this style. You just can't slap those 3 letters on things and be like, well, that's an IPA. Like, no, that's a wheat beer that's sour. and but it's like, no, it's my IPA. It's like, all right, well, without a legal definition, they can get away with it. So you see some really odd things being called IPA or wheat, or I'm sorry, not wheat, or craft or something. it's funny, but it's also a little sad because the problem is a lot of these brands doing that or people doing that have quite a bit of money, so they're able to push a lot of this product. And the worry that I have is
And the
that
people learn
people
that
think
thing.
that's craft
Yes,
beer.
yes.
And they're like, I don't like it. It's not for me. It's kind of gross. And I'm like, I would agree. That is gross, but
But
that's
it's not craft beer.
Yeah.
I think eventually though, like, hopefully it will shift all the shit out, and then, you know, everything like this kind of like new influence or different kinds of culture. It takes time to shift through in China before
Right.
they can get to the point where, you know, it's standardized compared to what we're used to back at home.
Well, and I think like for me, like I've never been a beer snob or a beer Nazi. I've always been about the best beer for me is usually free beer. So if you give me free beer, I'm gonna drink it. If I walk into your house and you give me a beer, I'm gonna say thank you, and I'm gonna drink it. Like I'm not gonna be like, oh, don't touch that. But I just want to make it's not about just like snobbery of saying this is craft and that's not craft. It's a lot about it's like what's your intention behind this product. That's where I kind of am focusing on now in China. Like, why are you doing this? Is it just to make money? Because if you're just trying to make money, just go buy an apartment. You're going to make more money buying an apartment in Shenzhen than you are in a brewing business, and you're not going to piss a lot of people off with $9 beers that aren't any good.
Right.
But they think that it's a good way to make money now, so that's why you see more and more people, I think, jumping into it with the wrong intent behind it.
I guess.
Yeah.
Did you, in terms of experimenting, trying and making, is there still a lot of things that you want to try and try to create and put on your, let's say, portfolio, in your menu?
Yeah, menu. No, for sure. I mean, the biggest problem with the gypsy brewing issue is that we're forced to make larger volumes, so our variety is less because
Right. Okay.
you've got to be able to move it quick because the best beer is fresh. So we say, okay, well, we might only can one or two of our products, but we might make 30. So it's like not able to like, okay, now I want to, like, I'd love to start doing a lot of experimentation right now with different lagers and Belgian beers and things that aren't that popular because everybody's focused on the IPA right now. And I'm like, I'd rather do something different. But when you don't have a little, or not a little, but like a decent size, you know, let's say a 1,000 liter, 2,000 liter brewery or disposal, it's a little hard to do that. So, I mean, we still do that. We have a beer lab, and we make, you know, small 2-keg, 50-liter batches at a time. And we'll, you know, this week I've got a chocolate coconut porter, and I'm going to do a tangerine Baltic porter after that. I've got an American wheat, a cream ale with mandarin oranges and stuff I want to do. So there's like all these things I'm brewing, but they're not commercially available. So it's only available to like...
To you or to your bar, like locally?
Well, they're not even available in the bar yet because the...
No, of course, but if you would have the...
If I had the equipment, they would be in the bar.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to do.
So what you make? So you make this beer, and then where does it go to your house?
We drink it.
Simple as that. Yeah. But no, I think...
But the idea is though to say, okay, I want to commercialize this, right? Now I need to go make 2,000 liters of it or 4,000 liters of it, and I can't get it wrong at that volume. It's a $15,000 problem. So if I get it wrong, I lose $15,000. So like I got to make sure I get it right. So I test.
So
it
how,
first.
like you know like remember like Taps in Cocoa Park, and that whole brewery setup. That size of a setup would that be like too small for you or
it's a little
too big?
small.
It's a little bit small.
I mean, it's okay for a brew pub. I think that's a good size for a brew. I don't know what that was. I think it was 1,000 liters. It might have been 700 liters. It was somewhere.
They must
in
have
that
like
range.
8 of those big tanks or maybe more. I don't.
But I think for a brew pub, that's a great size. I don't remember what it was, but I remember seeing it and thought that's a really nice system for what they're doing. But if you wanted to sell that all over town, it's a little small.
So you need like triple, quadruple.
For me, I think at least 1,500 liters is like the minimum. And then, because you can always brew more, but it's hard to brew less because the system is sized a certain way. So the electricity turns on at this volume, or you can't heat it if it's less than this. So it's like it's hard to. You want to have that ability to experiment, but then also step it up and say, okay, we know we like this one. We know people like it. Let's make a ton of it and sell it.
Is it feasible to think that when you will have the new bar, you also kind of allow, let's say, customers to brew your beer or try to brew a beer in there on spot with you as a kind of experience
Like in
stuff?
the bar or somewhere else.
I would imagine
Like a training
in
class?
the bar, like you can come, every Sunday afternoon you can come and we will make beer together, and you pay whatever, you learn how to make the beer, and in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 1 month, we will send you a keg of your beer
Yeah,
that
I mean,
you made.
people have done it. I mean, I think In Beer in Beijing did that. You know, I remember before I moved here, so it must have been 8 years ago they did that. It's possible. It's just a question of like who wants to do it. And what I find here is, because I was in this whole COVID lockdown, I was stuck in Denver for a while, and so I was brewing in Denver, and I was hanging out in Denver a lot while I couldn't get back until I could get back in November.
There must be some very good beer in Denver.
There's amazing beer in Denver, right? But the thing is it's amazing partly because people get joy from making the beer. A lot of them aren't trying to sell it; they're just trying to make it. Unlike the Chinese system currently it's really about, can I commercialize this product? Can I sell this product? How much would you pay for this product? And it's more of a business thing, which is fine. I mean, I'm a
sales
business guy.
oriented rather
Yeah.
than
And so you don't, I feel like they don't have as much of the innovation going on around a lot of those beers. And like, I feel like if you did what you're saying, you'd end up with a lot of guys who are coming in there like, hey, I want to brew this IPA or hazy IPA. And, and then take that and turn it around and go make it some other brewery and then try to sell it all over China. And I don't really care to some extent, but at the same time, it's kind of like, well, what's your intent? Are you just trying to make more beer and like have a good time and try something new and experiment? Great. Or are you just trying to use it as a testing ground for you to take that somewhere else?
Yeah,
You
I
know?
didn't think about that, but I was seeing more about the experience of it for the users.
It's like there's homebrewer meetings every month in Shenzhen, and for the most part, most of the guys are just like, hey, I just want to homebrew some beer and share them, and some of them are awful and some of them are good and whatever. But then there's also a group where they're just like just trying to set up a brewery and kind of like learn as much as possible. And again, not that big a deal. Just be honest with what you're trying to do. That's what you're trying to do. Fine. And a lot of guys will help you. I mean, I've helped a lot of guys. A lot of guys have helped me in this town and around China. Like, hey, man, what do you need? What can I help with? With your business? So,
Do you still homebrew? You have a little stash at home that you're fucking around with at home?
those
for your-
test batches.
So like the cream,
Mandarin cream
Mandarin
ale?
is at home right now?
No, it's actually going to be made in second week of February. I've got it like planned out on what I'm making next. So this week it's or I guess next week is.
But you make it at
Baltimore
home,
Porter.
or?
No, we have so we are with some other guys who rent an apartment in Shenzhen. It's just for brewing. So inside this apartment, there's just a bunch of coolers, beer making equipment, storage, kegs, And it's like a little mini brewery, but in an apartment. And I didn't create that. This other guy who's a home brewer who's really into it, and he's just like, he's been doing it for years. And I met him and I was like, hey man, can I join? This is awesome, like what you're doing.
Right.
He's like, sure, man, come on by.
I think
So
we
I
met him
started-
at Mambo, right?
I
One
don't
time
know.
he popped up. We were playing Monopoly. And
Yeah,
was
maybe.
talking about- Yeah, I think
So I
Is,
just,
is it legal?
yeah, I mean, he's not selling it.
So it's
It's
okay.
completely
as long as
legal.
you don't sell it, yeah.
I mean, it's just, he's an architect, actually. He travels all over China building skyscrapers or something. I'm not exactly certain, but I know he's an architect. And he's just like, I like making beer, and I can't do it at my house because I don't have space. The wife won't let me. So I rent another apartment. I was like, that makes sense.
So do you guys all like share like rent cost or? And
Yeah,
then-
we just share the cost. Like, well, the rent's this, with this much electricity, split it. Like I said, I walked into it. He already had 99% of the equipment. There was nothing he really needed except for some fridges and stuff. And I was like, well, I got all this stuff in storage. Like, you don't need to buy anything. Let me go to storage. I get a truck, bring it all over, drop it off. So it was just nice. But we're doing it, like I said, he's just doing it for himself because he loves to make beer. I also love to make beer, but I was like, I could also maybe make a test recipe here and there and decide, do people like coconut in their beer in China or not? Let's figure it out.
Are you selling beers also outside of China or mostly China?
No, we have. I mean, there was one time we sent some pallets to Russia, and we did sell some beer in America in Denver, but that was a collaboration beer that we made.
But you made it here and sent it
No,
to
we made
US?
it in Colorado,
Oh, okay.
and then
Okay.
we sold it in Colorado. Actually, we sold it a few places, but I think it was pretty much all sold in Colorado. And but we have sold beer in other cities in China. But like,
So you like selling like in Beijing or?
we've done a little bit, Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, but a couple years ago we decided that I don't want to do that anymore.
Why? What was the reason?
I mean, like, it's hard to maintain the supply chain that distance.
And the quality because
quality
of all the
is-
temperature and
Yeah,
stuff.
the quality deteriorates rapidly, and I just felt that it'd be better to kind of keep it close to home. And you know, it's funny. It's like every import comes to Shanghai, pretty much. That's where they all start. That's where most of the importers are in the beer business in Shanghai, and they're all gone within 3 to 6 months. You know, so a brand will show up, and some of them are big brands, and there's so much beer coming into
Gone
Shanghai.
because they don't succeed.
Yeah,
like
gone
it's like
don't
too much
succeed.
competition and they get lost in
Yeah.
the ocean. Or,
Exactly. There's so much. I mean, every week something new arrives, and it's like there's only so many bars. I mean, China's got a lot of people, but doesn't have a lot of craft beer bars, craft beer lovers. So the market's
And
actually
most
pretty
people
small.
just drink like Qingdao or Harbin or
Whatever's available.
Budweiser.
Right. So I just decided, like, no, you know, we're not going to do those cities. We'll just stay in Guangdong. We'll stay within our borders. We'll kind of keep it a Guangdong thing.
yeah, within the range of your brewing. Then maybe if you scale up and then you have a brewery in Beijing, then it will be also around there. like,
Exactly. So like a lot of one of the, I think it's the largest craft brewery now in America, but it's sort of craft. It's called Yingling. It's been around for, I don't know, 200 something years.
Oh.
And they took 200 something years to expand from Pennsylvania and their little area to Florida. And they did it because they bought a brewery in Florida. And then they made their beer down there, right? And it's like, you know, it's like these breweries take a long time to move from coast to coast in the United States. So to think that you're going to show up in China and you're going to be in Beijing, Shanghai, Wuhan, Shenzhen, it's like, that's like going from New York to Portland to Texas. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But they do it here all the time. And that's why I think a lot of them don't do so well in a long term. And it's kind of sad because some of them are good brands. It's just, for some reason, they think of China as a place. They don't think of it as China is actually the same size as the United States if Alaska was attached to it. So it's a big place.
Yeah, I mean, like my first experience with craft beer, I was probably like 21, 22. My friend lived in Montana, and then I went for one weekend to go visit his family, and he took me to this little brewery in Montana. I can't even
Remember the
remember
name of the town?
Missoula.
Missoula, okay.
So, and then we went to this little brewery, and the beer was so good, dude. Like, it was like my first time, like, you know, I was drinking like Corona and, you know, whatever you can get at 7-Eleven, but then I tried this beer. I'm like, fuck, man, like, blew up my mind. Then they're like, yeah, like, these guys refuse to sell beer outside of Montana. Like, they want this beer to be like, you know, Montana owned and Montana sold, you know.
I think there's value in that. You know, it's like in my dad's generation, the Coors was big. You know, now everybody knows what's Coors Light, which is pretty shit beer. But living in Denver, I mean, I've been to the Coors Brewery. It's sold everywhere. Coors Original, Coors Banquet. It's actually pretty good beer. And it took them until like 1980 something before they went from Colorado to the East Coast. It took them over 100 years, I think, to move across the United States.
Crazy.
Long time. And I think that developed a buzz. Yingling is kind of the new Coors in some ways, where it's not that it's great, but it's good. And because it was so hard to get, people are going like, hey, can I get a case of that? Well, if anybody's going to that place, like, bring me back some. And it like anything in life, it's not about sometimes the quality of the product, it's about the scarcity of the product. If you can't have access to it, you really, really want it. And that wasn't our intention so much as it was like just to make sure the product was high quality, but that's a nice side benefit of not selling it outside of Guangdong, is that, like, look, if you want it, you gotta go there to get it. So hopefully when people do fly or take a train or whatever, they're like, hey, while you're down there, pick up some of that for me, or we do ship it. I mean, if you want to buy it in another province or city, you can buy it online from us.
They can order online and just
yeah,
get
but
them
we would
shipped.
just ship a small amount, and we would package it properly and
Like
send it
ice
there.
packs or something.
Yeah, like 48 hours, whatever, it's there, so you can get it. But it's not a large amount. You couldn't go to a bar and pick it up.
Right. And when you moved to the new shop in Nantou,
Nantou, yeah.
about was it like April? You plan to open?
I mean, they say I'm hoping for May 1st.
May?
But it really depends on when they give us a facility.
How many beers do you plan to sell there?
Oh, that'll be 12.
12 beers.
Yeah.
All yours.
Well, we hope. The problem is our brewing problem. So we don't have a brewery, right? So we got a Gipsy Brew. So it comes down to like, how many beers can I make in other places before to fill the tap? So I'm sure there will be guest beers. The question is how many. I don't know if we'll have 2 or if we'll have 4, but there will be a number of guest beers just because we can't fill the taps with our own beer. If I had a brewery and didn't have to travel all over the country to do it, we would have all 12.
Control it, yeah.
So I think having like guest beers is nice too, though, like because they can guest you and you can guest them. And
I mean, that's the theory, but oftentimes it doesn't work that way. There's not the community.
Because the bar is not necessarily the one that owns the beer.
True. Well, but also like the craft beer community is not as tight in China as it is in the
No?
US. No.
Like tight as in like friendly or tight
Yeah.
as in okay.
It's not as no one's like, well, I don't know about no one, but few people are like at each other's throats, but few people reach out and like really
Try to help each other.
Yeah, there's like a small group of brewers who do actively kind of support each other, but for the most part, it's
On their own.
it's on their own.
But that's why earlier I was saying what you're doing with the beer festival is like somehow unexpected. I mean, or not so straightforward.
Yeah, it's cool.
right?
Like at the beer festival, there's like, I mean, pretty much besides like people who are from Shenzhen, I've never heard of any of them until I came to the beer festival.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are from like Mongolia and Sichuan and Yunnan and like really far away places. And they, part of the reason why we have it in November is because we know that all the northern places are cold. So we know that
They want to come down and have a little vacation.
They're like, hey, Shenzhen seems pretty nice right now. So that's part of it. And they and if they're making great beer, then I'm like, come on down and have a. And a lot of them have used smartly the breweries that are really smart about it. Use the beer fest as a way to enter the market. That's the way you enter a market.
To enter the market here in Guangdong or Shenzhen,
You
locally,
don't
you mean?
open a bar in a city you've never been to. People do it, but it's not smart. The way to do it is you go to a beer fest. It costs you $2,000 or $3,000.
You test people
you meet
around, you
everybody.
go around
Meet
bars,
everybody,
and
yeah.
how much is the rent here? What
Right.
is it?
They meet you, and then the bartenders. You see if you have success by how many people order your beer. Because part of the whole point of the festival, particularly Sunday, is we give out free tickets to any bar owner or restaurant owner in the city. Very few people take us up on it, but we always offer, so that way on
They
Sunday
can test their
yeah,
beers.
it's slower,
and-
right? Come on in and meet the brewers, have a conversation, maybe buy some kegs off of them. And if people are buying kegs, and we've had a number of breweries enter the market through that festival, where they're like, oh man, this guy ordered 15 kegs, this guy ordered this,
That's
and then
great.
they start the relationship of
beautiful.
long-term sales. Yeah. And if people aren't buying it, well, then they just exit.
But I think like this beer festival you could do this in Guangzhou, you can do it in Changsha, you can go to Chongqing and like take this beer festival all over China. I mean, maybe these other cities are doing this kind of thing, but
They're not, but the problem is the product that we offer to the customer is the brewery. So how many of these breweries can go to those places, and although there are lots of breweries popping up in China, not many of them are very good, like yet. So
you have a good portfolio of breweries at your festival.
But
So,
maybe
like,
what would happen? I mean, just
20 breweries is already
hypothetical
a lot
thing.
of vendors.
If you do it in Chengdu, maybe those that are doing things in Sichuan that they cannot afford, they don't think to coming over to Guangdong, you would hook them up there, and then you have like local brewers. Then of course I don't know how big is the spectrum and the scenario of the
when
the
we've
local
thought
brewers
about it,
around.
it just becomes like its own business at that point. It's like an animal on in
Yeah,
and
you
of
need
itself.
people literally being
Right.
on that 24
And it's like,
hours.
it's kind of fun to do once a year because it's a lot of work. And I think literally we've had the conversation. We're like, maybe we could do this somewhere else. And I thought, yeah, we probably could. But is it really getting us to what we want to do.
Yeah,
What is it? Because it's all trade-offs. Like if I'm going to spend time doing this and I'm not spending time making beer, I'm not spending time doing something else that I could be doing.
But eventually, though, I think it would become it's just like a formula. Like you've done it so many times, where like you need the space. You already know how to sign up the breweries. You know what you need. Okay, you need electrical wires and a DJ table
But a lot of it comes down to the venue. The venue is key because we've found that oftentimes the landlord of whatever place you're going, if they will charge an obscene amount of money for a place, like so much money that like it's no way possible we could actually afford this. And you come down to like it all comes down to like who's going to handle the venue, who's going to handle the police, who's going to handle the chungguan and the fire, right? Because these are these things where if they're not all on the same page, you'll be closed in a minute. So you've got to have the relationship in place that allows you to come in like, oh, these guys are doing this. We know who they are. It's all cool.
Right.
Like we've always had a really good relationship with our venue landlords. And I think it'll be even better in Nantou because, they want us to be there as opposed to like other places where like, no, literally, this is how it's going to go.
I don't care about you. You want my place,
right.
you pay for it. I
Right.
want to bank it. Yeah.
And that's worked out well for us so far in other venues, but we've had problems like last minute where the chungguan need a little of this, a little of that, and you're like, oh, okay, it's like that. So then they've got you by the balls. You've got to open this doors. So you got 1,000 people waiting outside.
It's like it's too late to
Yeah,
be
it's too
back or
late.
do anything.
So you gotta pay, or you gotta do whatever you gotta do to make them happy. And that's why it comes when you go to another city. You're like, I don't know any of these people. I don't know who's in charge of this venue or who the local boss is of this town. But it would be cool to do. But I just find like the product offered would be a product that, like I said, there's some great breweries in China, but there's still not many. So you'd have to take the same breweries from city to city on like a tour.
Yeah, it'd be like a tour, like a van tour.
It'd be like big old buses driving around. I mean, it'd be fun. I don't know if we make any money.
Like if you did like one every quarter, right? Like 4 times a year, like the big cities, like and use the same breweries. I mean, maybe 70% would follow you, and then you find another 30%. Right. To join up who maybe are local breweries or something like that.
I mean, there's a lot of breweries too that are great breweries in China that don't come to our festival, not because we're not friends. It's just because they're like, look, I don't have any desire to sell beer in your market, and it's going to cost me. They break it down. I gotta bring 3 staff. It costs this much for train tickets, this much for hotels, this much for food, this much for this, and they're like, so I'm going to spend $20,000, and I don't sell beer here. There's no purpose for me to be here. Right, so that's.
I was gonna ask because I've never seen Taps. Taps is.
They've done it once.
They did it once.
They did it. I don't know why they don't do it now, but they've been invited and they've done it once.
I mean, they're like between you guys and Taps. I mean, they're like probably in my perspective, they're the most famous.
I would say Taps is way more famous than we are in a lot of ways. I mean, with the Chinese community, Taps has done very well, but they're not. It's a different product in a way. I don't know how.
Yeah, it's a bit. I mean, I like the place, but in terms of beers, I think it's very weird. There's a lot of people I hear that they don't like that beer.
I mean, it depends who you talk to. Taps is more of a, in my view, and it's very successful. It's pointed towards like a real high-end clientele, the kind of people that like to drink beer out of a wine glass, the kind of people that don't mind spending $10 on a beer. Like that's just whatever,
Yeah.
That's not. I'm a blue collar guy.
You're a picnic beer.
Yeah, I grew up in blue collar guy. I've always thought like beer's for the people. It's not scotch. It's not high end wine. So like we kind of go after a different market, but I think they've done well with what they've done.
But by the way, because I know this is the same group behind, but all the beers of Rich Cat, are they made by the same brewery and people that make the one for Taps?
They took the brewer from Taps.
Because I think Rich Cat is very
Rich Cat.
successful. They open, I don't know, 17 places all around Shenzhen, and
I think it's actually like 30 something. But like so that was a split, and I don't know all the inside details, but the guys that were behind Taps had a split, and one of them went with and did the Glass Hammer Rich Cat thing, and one continued to own Taps. And Rich Cat is a sub brand of Glass Hammer.
Oh, and by the way, now when we were talking about Taps, Okay, I was talking about Glass Hammer because there is this situation.
Oh, there's a big difference between Glass
Okay,
Hammer.
okay,
and
no,
Taps.
sorry, because in the beginning was Taps. Ever since it was Glass Hammer,
Yeah.
I hate those beers and everybody's
Oh, so
complaining
you said
about it.
people don't
Sorry,
like
I
it.
was talking about Glass Hammer.
Okay.
Man, Taps, okay, sorry. We are on the same line.
Yeah, Taps was fucking great, man. Like when they first opened in Coco
Yeah,
Park.
yeah,
man,
yeah.
It was like,
I loved it. So, okay.
I mean, like
I
they
get
had
it,
the
sorry.
coffee roasting.
Oh, that was
you
great.
Like,
Yeah.
everything they did with that place was so like
Premium.
premium.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like the only thing that was shit about the place was the food. The food was like hit and miss. But like for me personally, I like the beer. I like the selection. The coffee was super good.
I like
you
the
know?
beer a lot. I was just too cheap to pay for it.
You know?
So I was like, I mean, I tap out around $7 a beer. I'm like, man, it's got to be super special. But if you're gonna charge me $8 for a wheat beer, I don't know. Like it's too much.
But it's not just about the beer. It's about the atmosphere where you're drinking the beer too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So like I said, it's just kind of a different product. But for this market, I think it was a really smart business move. I mean, you can always say like you would do one thing for business and one thing for personal, like just preference. And I think business-wise, that was a good move. But
personally, I don't understand why that place, because eventually it changed the name, changed owners, but then they closed most of it and opened a new place. But like
because it wasn't making the money I think they thought it was going to make.
But I don't understand why though, because like it's such a cool location, good product. I mean, maybe.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you got to remember that most people in China are not drinking craft beer, right?
Yeah.
Particularly the location they were in. That's Coco Park,
Right.
which is, in my opinion, it's like the asshole of Shenzhen. Like it's super popular and it is what it is as far as business. But like don't go there. And it used to be better like 7-8 years ago, I guess. But you know when it was like just La Casa and the kitchen and stuff like that.
Rapscallions was there.
Raps was there. You know, like things were a lot different. But I think now, particularly, it's just
Too much.
just true or
Became
die
too
to the
much.
core. I mean, it's where you go to just drive your Lambo and drink fake cocktails that are 120 RMB, and you know, I think that place and that market, the location didn't fit the clientele, so to speak, because they're not super big beer people. So although I thought the beers were pretty good, it just wasn't what those people in that market wanted. You know, it's which is I think why Taps in their original spot has done so well, because it's smaller, it's more intimate, it's more
Right.
community focused,
Right.
and they're able to provide the same beer and to people who really, really enjoy it.
Right.
And
The people who appreciate it.
right. But yeah, the Rich Cat thing is totally different. They're going like very, I mean, low blue collar. Like they're selling beers for like $2, like 15, 20 RMB.
And I enjoy their beers. I like it. We have a Rich Cat just down the street.
Yeah.
You know, we go there sometimes when we just want to.
I've only been to one because I think
And they
there's
open
like
very
30 or
fast.
40.
And then you know what I think, even though it might not be necessarily good in terms of preservation, but like the experience of the Taobao beer that they do the transparent can on spot for you. Of course, you're not gonna save it in your fridge for a month. You're gonna drink it same night. It's one thing that I think made it catchy also for people.
You're talking about filling it and canning it right there.
They
Right
fill
there,
it
yeah.
up in
Crowler,
a
yeah.
transparent can and they close it on spot and they draft
Yeah.
it for you. It's like draft craft.
We're doing the same thing at our new spot. It's called a crowler. It's been around for
Right,
a long
okay.
time. They used to fill glass bottles, and now they fill the cans. You have little machines, you know, close it right there. It's usually good for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
maybe longer. But everyone drinks it like right
Yeah,
away.
of course.
You know?
You
Yeah,
wanna-
it's
I was
cold.
stop there because I wanted to bring over beers at the office, or we just order them, and it's nice.
They deliver to us.
No, I mean, in fact, that when I was asking you before, it was because I think when I go to Glass Hammer, knowing there is the same group before, behind, I don't know. I'm not much into those beers, but Rich Cat, I tried them all. Of course, there's those I like and those I don't, but it feels very successful. Maybe
Yeah,
because
well,
they
I
keep
mean,
it low
I don't know their business very well. I just know that it's a franchise model. So
Yeah.
each one of those places is owned by a different person, like a McDonald's, right? So they pay some sort of fee, and then they order their products from the main company. And I've only been to one of them, but I would imagine that to some extent, each one might be a little different because it's a different owner for each one.
Yeah,
right.
probably, yes. Yeah. See, they will also they manage it in the PR. But what I think is good in terms of strategy is that they are going in really niches places where there is nothing else. And
I think the strategy is great.
This makes a difference. You know, they ended up in a little alley there where there was like a massage play, a barber shop, and a dentist.
It's super good. I mean, before they were doing like big clubs and like huge like operational places, and then they decided to like, okay, well, 100 of these small shops could do much better than.
It's filling the gap of places where if you just want to have a drink.
Yeah, you can put this little alley bar in
I think
every place in Shenzhen.
I mean, it's definitely a big thing of what we're doing is all community. Like we like to be in communities. We don't want to be in shopping malls, right?
Right.
And I think Rich Cat takes it one step further, where they're just like they're in a, like you said, an alleyway or something, which is what we did originally. And they take like 50 square meters and they'll like put a bar in there, which is pretty small. I mean, like they can't really have a kitchen, they got to kind of order in their food from other places. But the concept of saying like, hey, look, there are people that live here. They need a place to go. We're just going to put a place right here and we're going to make it accessible for everybody. Pretty smart.
Affordable.
Yeah, affordable. I think that's what I mean by accessible, affordable. Like as long as they make good beer, I think it's only going to help everybody. Because then people go, oh, that's good. It's a little bit of an issue with the pricing because we import every ingredient but the water. So it's impossible for us to actually produce beer at the cost that they sell it for. But I think that's not really that big a deal because people will just realize like, oh, some of it is made with Chinese ingredients and it's a little cheaper. Some of it's made with imported ingredients, so it's more expensive. Like it is what it is. It's just like different wines. There's
for sure I can imagine that there was of course a bit of a, let's say, larger and long-term investment behind, but probably when you are, of course, the only beer you can buy there is made by them. So then we go back to the thing we were talking before, like quantities. You're gonna make a huge quantity, you take down the cost, and then you want to try to open as many places as possible. It's a kind of investment risk, maybe upfront or selling well your franchise, but then if you have to make 10,000 liters, you better have 10, 15, 20 places.
Exactly, to move it all.
To move it around, We really love this beer so far. And all you guys listening to it, we will put all the contacts and stuff. People can order online, right?
Yeah, I mean, more after Chinese New Year because 2020 was like it was for everybody. So we were kind of keeping our inventory levels low so we could make sure that everything stayed fresh. But we've got a bunch of new stuff coming out in right after Chinese New Year. We made a collaboration, a new beer that I don't think they've done in China yet. It's called an IPL, so India Pale Lager. And we did that with Wild West Brewing out in Chengdu. And that's only going to be in kegs, but it'll be out in about 3 weeks, I think. Okay. Around Chinese New Year. And then after that, we'll start having more of our other normal beers available. But yeah, you can order online. And once the new pub is open in Nantou, they'll be able to order food and beer right off the app. So they can have it delivered to wherever.
So just,
And that one will do crowlers, so you can try the other beers too, because only a few of our beers we produce in large enough quantity that allows us to like properly can them, and the other ones we can just take it off the draft system and can it and
can it yourself on spot.
It'd be good for a couple weeks.
Yeah, but I guess that most of the people that would order it is because they want to drink that like
right away. Yeah,
like,
that's when I do it.
I'm having a dinner at home, or like when we do in our podcast, order beer and they arrive and we finish them. Yeah, cool. And I think that in Nantou is gonna be nice because it's also like the area that is generally new. People wants to be around to see things during the day, but then maybe there's only one spot for now where you can stop until like late or having drinks and beers and stuff. So I think that this is what is missing in the Nantou area for now.
Yeah, I mean, I have been to Nantou a few times. I know they have some cocktail spots, which are pretty good, and they've got a beer place that I've never been in it. But so far, it's a bit touristy. It doesn't have quite yet the liveliness that it's going to have, I think, because they're not done with construction. But I know there's a lot of people that are going to live inside Nantou, and there's also a lot of people that live around Nantou. So I expect it to be quite busy over the next year or two, but it'll probably take a year or so for it to start to really catch on. I think because it's a new, or it's not new. It's been there for 2,000 years, but it's being redeveloped.
The new image, the new facade of it, and they made it happen very fast because even now, what we see now of the first phase in Axis, we were talking to Anson in our podcast last month. It's been done in 4 or 5 months. The whole crazy development and construction.
I mean, if it can be built fast, it can be done in China. That's for sure.
Yeah,
I just
Shenzhen speed.
Right, Shenzhen speed, right?
Crazy. And also, like we were saying, we can already confirm that next year the festival is going to be in Nantou, the beer festival, right?
Yep, right there in the main square, 2 levels. I think next year is going to be perfect. I think, if we held it there multiple years, my main concern is is it big enough?
Exactly. Yeah.
We are already bringing a few thousand people, and I feel like that space is going to be. It's a really great space, but you definitely have to think
saturated easily.
Yeah.
Well, you could technically expand into the park or something. I know there's the just above it.
I forget what it's called, but it's like a really big park.
It's a huge park.
Nice. It looks. I went there first. I think it was 3 years ago. They had some sort of architectural event, and there.
The
Biennale.
Was that 3 years ago?
2017.
Yeah. I remember going there, and we sold beer. It was funny because I don't remember who, but some guy was very last minute. It was the week. I was like, hey, can you bring some beer to this festival? We're like, yeah, sure. Do you want to pay for it, or do we sell the beer? How does this work? Just sell it. Okay, well, how many people are going to be there? The communication was not very good. So we ended up bringing 3 or 4 kegs of beer. We were sold out in 30 minutes.
No.
It was all gone. And so we're calling, hey, I need you to bring 10 kegs right now. We have a line of 60 people trying to buy beer. Because, we always ask when these companies put these festivals together, I need to know how many foreigners are going to be there.
Right. Because
And
they are the drinkers.
They're why? And because they're going to drink, and it was a bunch of European architects who are we're here to party.
Coming from all over the world also.
All over the world, right?
Yeah.
And we were the only people there selling beer, thinking we're going to sell beer to maybe 20 people. So we're just
first 10 minutes.
There, beer, and holy shit, there's a lot of people here.
No, I can imagine. That was a bit what triggered and sparkled probably the interest into making Nantou what it is now and what it's going to be. But I'm thrilled. It's nice to see that things coming together.
Yeah, I didn't know you guys were gonna have your own spot there. That's really interesting.
Well, it's a brand new development, for us, and
we didn't announce.
We haven't talked about it publicly at all.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool to be neighbors, and like I said, we're gonna do something a little different. And instead of every other brewery bar in the city that's open at 5-6 p.m. or whatever, we're open all day. So you can come in and get lunch. At the latest we're gonna open is 11. We might open at 10, and people can get a coffee, get a tea. I love beer, but I don't like to drink it all day, every day. I go through weeks at a time where I don't drink any beer. So it would be kind of nice to just have a place where it's you know what, I just want to get some food. I just want to get a coffee, but I don't want to go to Starbucks, and I don't want to go to. It's okay, you can go there. So it's comfortable. It's hopefully decent Wi-Fi for once.
And also Anson was telling us that they are not keen on bringing in big brands. They will never have a Starbucks there. They will never have a McDonald's there. This is part of their aim.
Their vision.
They don't want to have that. And if you consider that also a big chunk of the creative professionals and a bunch of students and stuff will be living there and doing their things there, I think that what you're saying is exactly matching with the will of people of it can be that they come and work and do things in a nice place while drinking coffee, having food, or maybe a beer later on because they need a spot for 4 or 5 hours like a Starbucks. Now it gives you that possibility of I'm gonna go and work in Starbucks. How many freelancers, especially in my business, are working from Starbucks, but Yeah, this is not gonna go there. They don't want it, so I think that is a plus from your perspective into knowing it.
Yeah, it looks really cool. When we were there just the other day, taking some measurements to do some design work. It's funny, right? I'm standing on our stoop, I'm looking across, and I'm like, "What's that gonna be?" And they're like, "It's like this little old building. It's like wrapped in a modern design. Like, oh, that's an ancient house. We're just wrapping it in this. We're gonna build this, this, this." And I'm like, "That's pretty cool. Like, there's this ancient little building right there that it was the size of a bedroom, but it was a building, and they're just wrapping it in a modern building, but they're gonna redo that little piece." And they're gonna try to revive it. I was like, that's pretty interesting.
This is what I showed you earlier. That me as an architect with my studio, we are taking care of some of these really old or non-structurally fitting buildings into do something because they want to preserve it. That's very cool. I mean, if it was probably 5-7 years ago, the mentality of that kind of
break it
development
down.
in China, just fucking take it down, man.
That's how we ended up in Baishizhou. So a couple weeks ago, a week ago, I did an interview with these researchers putting together this thing on Baishizhou, and they were like, "We want to talk to like, how did you end up in Baishizhou? Like, of all the places you could have gone in Shenzhen, because you got to remember, when I came to Shenzhen to open my brewery, I had never been to Shenzhen. I'd never been to Hong Kong, and I'd never been to Shenzhen. It was literally the first day I arrived, I came here to open up a brewery. And they're like, but of all the places, like, well, I found it because some guy introduced me to it. I was at a party, and the guy said, "Oh, you got to check this out." He took me to it. And I looked at it, and I said, well, I just come from Beijing. I said, it's not exactly Beijing. It doesn't have the hutongs and everything, but it's the closest thing I can find in Shenzhen to, like, real Shenzhen or real China. Like, it wasn't...
all have,
Yeah, it wasn't a glass shopping mall, which is what most things are here. So there's some authenticity there. And I was like, well, authenticity is what I'm looking for, even if it's dirty and whatever, like, well, this is what we're going to do. And I felt that Nantou actually has an updated version of that. It actually has a massive amount of history that's almost 2,000 years old. It has some old buildings that they're going to preserve, unlike Baishizhou, which never had that, but it had that feeling of it at least. So I think it's going to be pretty cool when they're done with it, assuming they can get the right mix of companies and also people living there. Because people live, like in the building that we're in, people live above us.
Right.
People live on the side of us. So it's not just like a place to go and just take pictures. Like, people go there to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real community.
But if you think about it, it's also what happened recently in a different way, because it was not necessarily historical, but in the Suiwei area behind Mambo, what's called 1862. I don't remember
Something like that, yeah.
the number, where there is a WeChat,
Brass bar,
and all this.
Yeah.
They restyled the old urban village, and people are still living there, but at the same time they did kind of this diffused hotel, but then everything on the ground floor is restaurants and bars and stuff.
Yeah,
But there is no offices. I think in Nantou they are combining much more like activities of like showrooms and studios, creative community, whatever. But I think that is probably the right direction, because Shenzhen is not, you can find something old, but except Dapeng and Nantou, that is like really hundreds and thousands year old because of the fortress and stuff. The rest, it cannot be older than 30 years, right? If it's a factory or something, but at least they start seeing the value of trying to keep these things in order to give a vibe of the space and the neighborhood that it wouldn't be there if you just take it down and build something new out of scratch.
Yeah, and as whenever I talk to property owners, I'm always like, look, you've got to, if government people or whatever, is like, you've got to figure out some way. I know it's against your best interest, but you've got to figure out some way to like have cheap places for people, because for the most part, creative people don't have a lot of money usually. Right, so it's like, particularly when they're just getting started. So you got to figure out a way to if you don't, you're just gonna have a bunch of rich people and nothing else is interesting really about the place. So, and I don't know how to solve that problem. That's someone else's problem. But it's definitely, that's why we ended up in Baishizhou. That's why so many other people that are in Baishizhou are like, well, don't have a lot of money, want to do something cool. What's the smallest amount I can afford to fail on? Like, let's just fail with this. If it fails, it fails, but it doesn't fail too bad.
Right.
And
It doesn't put it in the street. Like,
Yeah.
No, it's true. But and now, it's a long time I don't go. I know that a lot of it is being torn down, but is it literally like
the old,
under
so
construction, like
Bionic number 3 is dirt. The buildings are gone.
Totally
sand
finished.
and pebbles?
It is. I walk by it. It's
concrete
actual dirt. You can pick up dirt in your hand. Like, it's gone. It's every bit of concrete, every building. It's.
What are yet another mall?
I'm sure it's going to be a beautiful shopping mall.
Competing with the one right behind it,
Yeah.
in the windows of the wall.
Was that the hardest for you, like to close number 3?
No, I don't have. Strangely enough, not a lot of attachment to that. Like, I have a bit of attachment to people. I try not to have a lot of attachment to things.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I don't know, like just looking into stoicism and things. It's like, don't try to control the externals. It's like, things happen. Like, you just focus on what you can change, work on that. Don't try to fix other people's problems and things that you can't have any control over. So I felt like, whatever, it is what it is. It was a good run. It was, for me, like when Magma was open and Bionic was open, we had this amazing like little
It was such a cool
thing
spot, man.
between the two, like where they're doing the wines and cocktails and crazy music, and we're doing beer and pizza, and they worked, between the two.
Did you know it already from Beijing, or you guys met in Shenzhen because of being neighbor there in Baishizhou?
No, they literally walked up to me one day and were like, "Hey, we're thinking about renting this place." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Who are you?" And they were
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, what are you doing? Like, we're gonna do this. Like, cool. Like, what do you need? Like, can I help in some way? And they're like, we want to call it. He had 2 names at the time. He was like, we'd become friends a little bit. This was like a month in. He was like, we don't know if we're gonna call it Magma or if we're gonna call it. I think it was Lava. They were between the two.
We talked about it on the podcast that we had with them.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't know. I feel like Magma's better. I don't know. He's like, why? I was like, I don't know. I just like it. And they went with the Magma, and it was, they were the loudest neighbor you could possibly have. There were days where I just turned my music off. I was like, you know what? It's fucking pointless, because what's coming from their side is so loud that it doesn't matter. But it was fun.
Hey, but it started also a big friendship, right? I mean, you guys.
Yeah, I was hanging out with Ado last week. We hang out all the time. So
I think that was like one of the coolest places in Shenzhen for a while, man. Like, like you had Bionic, you had Magma, Magma was doing
And the
like,
kind of people also that were there.
I think it was the people that made it the most special.
It's really a kind of a.
Well, it was
community.
It was the counterpoint to Coco Park. It was the exact opposite.
And
that in a little way was sad, because 2 little bars were able to be the counterculture of a city
Attracting,
of 17 million people. That makes no sense. Like, you had all the people going to this one place, the club district, with all the stuff that comes with that. And then there's like, oh no, they got a couple of these bars over here, and it's, not cheap, but cheaper, and do what you want. It's free and it's open, and they're always doing stuff.
You both guys. What was happening there was probably exactly hitting the spot of what was missing absurdly in a 17 million people city. I mean, from the craft beers, from the underground music, from it was not there. So.
And I still think I still think the people want it. I always wonder, like, when I talk to Ito, I was like, I want to do another Magma, but you're gonna have to figure out a way to make it quieter, because that's your downfall. Like, the neighbors aren't gonna deal with that
or
shit.
just find a place where they can be loud. I mean, they need a place so they can be loud. I mean,
no place exists in Shenzhen, man. You're in 17 million people around you. I didn't do shit. Ado threw a party a couple of weeks ago.
Well, we met.
Yeah,
you
I saw
there.
you, right?
Yeah.
And they got the power cut off.
And there's
they
nobody
were in the
around.
middle of nowhere.
Right.
I mean, we were in an industrial district.
Not even
on a
residential
rooftop. No.
neighbors around.
No. Yeah, and they're like, at midnight or 1 a.m, whatever it was, pull the power. I'm like, if you can't have a party here, you can't have a party anywhere, because there's literally nobody around. But that's it. When you're around 17 million people, that's what else? There's always someone around. You got to go to the forest somewhere in Yunnan. I mean,
You never know, they might still come there. No, cool.
Well, I'm looking forward to
New
was it
scenario.
Bionic number 4
actually, we had a pop up too.
in Checo, right?
Yeah, we had the pop. Yeah, I'd say like
So 4
4 or 5.
4.5.
Let's go with number 5 since we are
We
want to
still-
be skeptical with numbers,
We
numerology.
actually have a pop up currently. It's been there for 3 years in B10 Live House.
Oh, okay.
So if you go to B10 Live,
Yeah, it's like all your beers.
yeah, if you drink alcohol at B10 Live, it comes from us. Like we have a bar, we
Right,
have our
okay.
beer, we have some basic cocktails. But because of the COVID, B10 Live has been kind of closed a lot this year. But independent music venues are still selling our beer. Like we're popping up, but like as far as like permanent venues, yes, this will be number 4, not including MASH, which is a little bit different. But
We'll save the mesh story for another podcast.
yeah.
Yes, that can be a long one.
So we're calling this Bionic number 4
Bionic number 4,
in Nantou.
lucky number 4.
Or in China, it's
Lucky
bad
number
I
four.
know,
That's what
I know,
I was
it's bad.
saying. It's better 4 or 5, but for now it seems like you already broke
The record.
the chain of events of bad events happening after the festival, as you were saying before, and all the best luck for the next one where we are looking forward. We're going to be in neighbors, and thanks for being here today. Thanks for the beers.
The beer is great.
Amazing.
Cheers.
I keep on having it. And for all those who are still listening, as I was saying before, you can order online. Very soon, there's going to be the new Bionic in Nantou. We're going to organize something there.
And we keep some basic social media for the West, like Facebook and Instagram, but we update them like once a month at best because people in China don't use that shit.
Yeah.
We use WeChat like everybody, and that's just Bionic Brew China. So if they're on WeChat, Bionic Brew China.
We
it's
will
easy to
put
find
all
us.
the
Yeah.
links and contacts down here, like they say,
Yeah.
somewhere.
Somewhere
down
down
here in
there.
the description below. And yeah, let's also organize something when there is going to be the opening. For sure, we will all going to be there, and it's going to be a good one. Thanks for being here.
Cheers.
Last cheers.
Cheers, man.
Boom.
Cheers to the Chingy.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.